Sanders had indicated and had said about had used the word gaps, and I was wanting to reiterate the fact that there are gaps in every text, and that it is the reader's responsibility in many ways to fill in the gaps when he or she reads a text. And I think Professor Sanders was saying as well, when we read the biblical text, you know, there's just, I mean, you know, it's fixed, but it's not fixed in the sense that there are still gaps that have to be filled in. And I think that's very, very critical and very, very important. And that's the kind of thing we have to be involved in as readers. This is why it's critical for us to read, do a lot of reading. And the more we can read the text, even in its original language or in any language, I think helps to make us better hermeneutes or better interpreters of the text itself, and help to expand the text. And I think filling in the gaps also helps us to get in front of the text, you know, to get in front of that text. And getting in front of the text, all of this is to discern meaning. Meaning, you know, because if we cannot get at meaning, then we haven't gotten anywhere. We just have a text before us, but the question is, what does that text mean? And not only that, what does it mean to me here and now? What does it mean to us as a people, black people who've been slaves, who've gone through the Middle Passage in America, who've been treated with disdain and with all kinds of other negativities? What does that text mean to us here and now? And then what does it mean in a larger society, in a larger culture as well? But the issue is, for me, the meaning of the text, okay? I mean, certainly we have words, we have events that have taken place in Scripture. But what that event means, okay? What does it mean that Jesus was on the boat with his disciples when the storm came up and they thought that they were going to drown? What does that mean, okay? What does any of these other texts mean when we encounter them and when we read them? And when we try to convey them to the church and to the community that we are called to serve? We have to be serious about determining meaning, and I think that's one of the important elements of seminary education as well. I hope that our seminarians will be better at helping to develop and mine meaning from the text. Okay, and anybody can read a text, and anybody can repeat what the text says. Okay, and anybody can demonstrate what the text says. Okay, anybody can yell and holler the text over and over again. Almost anybody can scream us into a frenzy, but the question is always a question of meaning. What does this text mean on this particular day to this particular community, to this particular heralder of the gospel, and so forth?
Yes.
I think that's where.
And I think also the business of meaning. For example, in the historical criticism, we used to do it based on the model of mathematics. There is only one answer to this text. And I remember as a student in biblical studies, I was a bit hesitant about voicing my opinion about a text because it seemed that the Germans and the French and others had all of the answers. What is the meaning of this text? And therefore, what would I have to contribute with such powerful minds, I thought, you know, during that period of time? What we do in postmodern developments, and this is the beauty of it in some sense, although I disagree a lot with it.
He's come around now. He's going to use postmodernism to his advantage now.
No, what I'm saying is that there is no one meaning of the text. There is no one meaning of the text.
Absolutely.
But there are several meanings on each occasion, and that's what makes it so rich. But I do think, though, that we need to be serious about critical studies, and we need to be serious about postmodern as well, because I think that in being serious about it, critical studies, we begin to see what the postmodern offering is, and namely, you don't have just one meaning. You have meanings here. And so in the Gospels, for example, from the very beginning, You have a Gospel of Matthew, Gospel of Luke, Gospel of John, and Gospel of Mark. All the say in the Orthodox canon, which means that they did not see the issues in the same way. Which said it's like this. One time Jesus said, "Pray. These things come through praying." And another text says, "But fasting and praying." Now, which did Jesus say? Would be the issue. What did Jesus really say? About this. And that is the beauty, is that it came to people in different ways. And I recall black preachers when I was young growing up who would take you to the throne of God in the book of Revelation, chapter 4. And they would talk about that the heavens were searched and they couldn't find anybody to go down on behalf of humankind. And listen, it was like Apocrypha. They brought in some stuff that I had not read in the Bible, never heard anywhere, and it became really sacred tradition in the black community once those sermons were being preached. And it was like, this is the other version of the Bible that we have, you see. So I think this is a lot of room for imagination. But I think it is also important to be concerned about the social context out of which these documents came. And that's what we call the historical critical side of it. Too much of what we do in the church does not recognize the fact of a liberation struggle in the time of Jesus and the time of the church. Basically, a society dominated by Romans. And in our society, we are also dominated. And that helps us to see, rather, what Jesus' ministry was all about when Jesus decided in the wilderness to take a position on the offer of the world that the devil had offered, and said that human beings do not live by bread alone. That is quite important. In our world and in that world out of which Jesus came. Yes, postmodern and many meanings, but I think there is a kind of treasure trove of meanings that we can bring out of the biblical world, given what the historical critical situation was. It was a political situation. And we in the black church need to understand that we're not just talking about very personal religion, or like we used to say in church, I feel good, good, good. Since I've been talking to my Jesus, I feel good, so forth and so on. No, it's much broader than that. It's a social movement. And we need to make that transfer again to remind ourselves as we seek to balance the personal, the glorious, the situation where popularity is sometimes the end, the means, and the goal to what we are trying to achieve. We should understand that Jesus, at least from my point of view as a biblical scholar, Jesus was concerned about wounded individuals in his society. And he sought to heal these people and to bring them back to fullness. The person with the withered hand, the person with, the person who was not able to speak, the person who was blind, and people who had the issue woman with the issue of blood, who had sought solution but never could find it. I think that we in the black church and in the ministry today need to reconnect with the mission, the historic mission of Jesus, because that mission grew out of a situation similar to ours, where people were oppressed and despised and rejected. and Jesus, God brought them back through Jesus to life again. I think that is what we need to be.
I agree. We need to be more concerned about that than we are about this whole issue of popularity.
Yeah.
We need to be concerned about transformation, more concerned about taking on the ways of Jesus. I tell my students all the time, you read the Gospel of Mark, for example, in the very first chapter, we got people stopping up their ears about what it is Jesus is trying to teach, so that he meets resistance in the very beginning of the story. And so why is it that we think that, that we should all be lauded about what we do in the churches and that kind of thing? We're gonna, if you are engaged in something transformative, something liberative, then there's going to be some element of resistance.